Welcome. My name is Rob Manny, and I work at Inflectiv, and we are here for a recession proofing with revenue operations webinar. Thanks very much for everyone who's joined. I'm just going to share my screen. We are going to just have a little thing to guide the discussion at the very beginning. So the topic today is recession proofing with revenue operations, as we said. Just quickly, before we introduce the panelists and get into it, just wanted to explain who we are. For those who don't know, we are Inflectiv. We're a small but mighty team of revenue operations professionals who really work with process, platforms, and people to help accelerate marketing, sales, and customer success at companies to help them grow. And Jess is going to be our moderator for today, and she's going to introduce the panelists a little bit and get into things. So Jess, take it away.
Awesome. Hi, everybody, and welcome. If you've been to one of these before, welcome back. And if not, we're happy to have you here. I'm Jessica McAulay, been working in RevOps and that world, big data, all of those types of things for about 12 years now. And I'm here to talk to you with my lovely panelists about our current economic situation, really, and how revenue operations can help you. Some tips and tricks to what we can do to save money or to really help point your company in the right direction when belts are tightening and your costs are high potentially for different things, and really being able to make the best of your processes and getting the most out of the people in your team. So on that note, I'm going to introduce our lovely panelists first and have them give you a little bit of information about themselves. So first up, we will talk to Sarita from Bridgit, and then we will talk to Amy from RouteThis. So Sarita, off to you.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. So I'm currently working at Bridgit, which is a construction software company here in Kitchener-Waterloo. I have been in the revenue operations space now, and I'm going to date myself, but I go back to the early days of Eloqua, which is a marketing automation software. So about 15 years ago, and I started in that space. They are like the pioneers of marketing automation and marketing operations. So from there, that kind of just put me into this career path of marketing operations. And gradually, as I started working with more different startup companies, seeing the need to really align marketing operations with sales operations. So in different startup companies I worked at, I kind of took over the sales operations piece too, because I couldn't be successful in marketing operations without sales operations being successful. So, and then I went over to a company here in Kitchener-Waterloo called Exonify, where I headed up the revenue operations team there. And now I'm at Bridgit, where I lead the RevOps team at Bridgit for the last year.
Awesome. And welcome. Over to you, Amy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Luk. I currently work at RouteThis as a senior revenue operations manager. I've specialized in revenue operations for the past 8 years across several different industries, ranging from digital advertising, e-commerce, commercial real estate, and now I work in internet service providing. All of this is in the SaaS space. Previously, I worked in advertising agencies in the SMB and enterprise markets. I was initially a customer success ad operations and account manager. And that really solidified my understanding of how things have to come together as a revenue operations and how to see things in the big picture. Since then, I'd say my specialization in RevOps has been more in aggregating data migrations, making data easy to locate and to enable decision making, and also process building to ensure like a seamless go-to-market strategy. Yeah, awesome. And I'm hoping to build that out at RouteThis for the next coming years.
Amazing, awesome. So just a little bit before we get going today, as I realized I didn't say it to start with, we're going to have some questions and discussion, probably for about the first 40 minutes of the presentation, and then we'll open it up to questions. So please fire them off into the chat. We'll work our way through them, and we're happy to have them. So please, any question, there is no silly questions, no stupid questions. They're all good, and we're happy to have them. Okay. So
one last thing, Jess, could you maybe give a bit of background on you before we dive in?
Oh, it's gonna be one of these days today. So as I said before, I've spent about 12 years in the RevOps space, being in everything from tech startups to enterprise level businesses. So I've seen the gambit. I've even run the BI teams, which was a change for me, but huge. If you've talked or worked with me, you know I love data. That is my thing. Don't mess with it. And it is key to everything, in my opinion. But I love it. I love puzzles. I love to think outside the box and just really helping businesses get off the ground. I've been with Inflectiv for a couple of years now, and we love working with those growth stage businesses to help get them moving forward. So it's always a new puzzle. It's always finding little workarounds that will work for smaller businesses that may not have the bigger budgets. And it's a lot of fun working with a lot of different people. So that's me. And as I was about to say too, is let's get into the questions. We already talked about the agenda. So as we're talking today, can you guys or ladies tell me a little bit about your revenue ops journeys and where your companies are at in terms of their RevOps strategies and principles? How are you measuring your ROI and things like that? Amy, you wanna start there?
Sure. So RouteThis, I would say we're at the point where we just completed a post Series A. We completed that last year. We're building the function. We're making the investments at this moment, and we're becoming more strategic with how we want RevOps and other parts of our business to be founded. I would say the goal is to ultimately make Salesforce the single source of truth, where the tech, the process, the data, all of it feeds into or fed data from Salesforce. In terms of ROI, I would say we haven't gotten to the point yet where we're measuring it at this moment because we're really in the process of building out the team. But in the past, what I've seen is we can measure it through deal velocity, like how quickly a prospect can move through the company's sales pipeline and generate revenue. It's a great way to indicate how well the health of the sales team and the productivity of it, but also just and comparing the effectiveness of each of those individuals on those teams. And then the other portion is that it helps us as RevOps be able to identify areas in the process where it can be improved, and additionally also to forecast more accurately.
Totally. All right, Sarita?
Yeah. It's a great question. So we're probably maybe a little bit ahead of RouteThis. I've been at Bridgit now for just over a year. Previous to that, RevOps was, done on the side of somebody's desk. It was probably a quarter of what their whole responsibility was. But they did realize they just could not rely on their Salesforce, their data. Nobody could feel strong in making a data-driven decision. And so they brought myself in to kind of get Salesforce into a much better shape to be that one source of truth. And that is where we really have spent the last year, is just refining the sales process, making sure we have governance in place around that sales process, making sure that the right fields are being populated, but also not restricting the sales team from progressing opportunities, and being able to monitor that so we can understand, where the gaps are, where the issues might be in that sales process. So that's, where we've spent the majority of our time this past year. But we've also brought in marketing operations to really help on the marketing side and, bring those metrics back up to the top of the funnel and making sure that we're measuring all the way down now, and have a full understanding of where the leakages are, where the gaps are. So we are, we're entering into that phase now, I'd say, where we're really focusing in on the top of the funnel and making sure that we've got the right data in place to track that. So still early, but I would say the ROI or measuring it really is, to Amy's point around the velocity, making sure that we did make that impact on the sales process. Things are moving faster. And then also, to be honest, it's when I get on these big company calls or even just, our pipeline review calls, those weren't happening before. And people are now speaking to the data. People are now asking for the reports, asking for the data in order to make decisions. And to me, that is a huge win. So definitely making progress there in the right direction, but lots to do.
Yeah, no, you guys are hitting the nail on the head for what we see with customers and what I work with on a regular basis. I think my biggest call out or when we're talking about ROI is, and what I like to say is kind of be aware of vanity metrics, right? Try and steer away from open rates and impressions, shares, that kind of stuff that isn't as core or as important to the business. It is important. I'm not saying it's not, but really just understanding that there's a lot of fluff and a lot of people are going to call out a bunch of numbers that aren't necessarily as important. But as a RevOps group, I find that we're really more focused, like you said, on velocity, on having that source of truth, your conversion rates, your lifetime customer values, all of those types of things are really where we like to kind of focus in for our numbers, or we're looking at that return on investment, which is great. So and as our topic is, and with the current or pending economic downturn, companies are scrutinizing their budgets, right? Even more than they were before. Not that they didn't before, because we all know they do. What are your go-to low-hanging fruit that other people in RevOps can use to maximize their budget or to really see that return? Sarita, I'm coming to you this time.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. I usually, there's lots of different pieces to it, but I would say one piece is definitely on the tech stack. I mean, a lot of companies I've worked with or spoken with have a deep tech debt. And it's usually, different leaders bring in different tools that they're used to. If you don't have that GTM or go-to-market tech stack all living in one budget and having one set of eyes on that tech stack budget, whether it's finance, whether it's RevOps, I've seen it in both different worlds, but having one eye on that versus splitting up that tech budget into different teams, because you're going to get a lot of duplication of tools. One team will bring in a tool and have no idea that marketing automation tool can do the exact same thing or can do 80% of that other tool. And do you really need to spend that extra money on that, shiny object? So I think the tools and having that all live in one budget, and really understanding, one thing that I like to do is map the tools along a customer journey. So have your customer journey, map the different tools you're using. You'll really see where the overlap is, where the duplication is, which will allow you to kind of step back and say, okay, do we really need that tool? And then the other piece of it is making sure that when it is in one, you have one eye that's looking at renewals, looking at, whether there's different things built into the contracts. When it's all over the place, it becomes really hard to manage. So that is kind of the low-hanging fruit that I like to. It is a hard one. Sometimes people like to hold on to that budget. So that is one that you kind of have to fight for sometimes. But I do find it very helpful, especially going into these types of times, to just make sure you're spending the money on the right systems and don't have a lot of debt there.
Do you have any examples of when you've gone through to do that duplication or assessment and kind of what your criteria was for it?
So we had one example, I would say back, we had a team, it was actually a CS tool. And we had that tool for maybe 4 years and put a dedicated effort in getting that tool up and running. We even took our system person and said, you can have this person for 4 months dedicated directly for this tool. And I think for us on the RevOps side, we were able to figure out what are the needs to have and what are the nice to haves with this tool. And a lot of the need to have we could build out either in a CRM tool or in a BI tool, which we had both already. So building some of that out and getting them to recognize that you don't need, all the bells and whistles in this particular tool. Your need to haves can be completely accomplished in, these two tools that we have, and getting the buy-in there and showing them, the light there. Really did help, because that was a big chunk of investment there on that particular tool from a people spend, but also just on an investment spend on the money there. So that definitely helped. So we were able to get rid of that tool, have them now all live in Salesforce, get the right data they need, with some of our reporting happening in a BI tool.
Totally. Do you find, and this is total segue here, but do you find that your teams respond better to like an MVP, like a proof of concept, or showing them versus explaining it to them?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So usually we have to build stuff out in our sandbox. That was something I introduced here when I joined Bridgit, was let's not roll it out in production. Let's roll it out in sandbox, get that buy-in first before we go and push it live, and really, get their feedback, because they've got the valuable feedback. They're going to be living in this, doing this on the day-to-day. So yeah, absolutely. But yeah, trying to explain it to them never ends well.
We all get stuck in that one. Yeah. And all right, over to you, Amy. What do you have on your quick wins or low-hanging fruit?
For me, I think it sort of builds off of what Sarita was saying. License counts, and just really, when you purchase a tool, using the usage reporting, understanding who's actually using the tool, because if you hand it out and you don't do the proper training or know how you as a team are going to utilize that in your process, I find that a lot of that you can provision it and then it just sort of falls to waste. That has been one of the quickest wins in terms of just saving money across everything. I've in the past worked with IT on this. Like, we've actually had it where, because I would own marketing and CS, implementations and sales, all of those tools would roll into me. But then they have the additional ones of like Jira and engineering and other project management tools that the whole company likes to use. So having that full purview of what the whole company is using actually really helped to consolidate that tool duplication. Sometimes also when people want to purchase a new tool, like, it's helpful to have a form and just to be like, why do you want to purchase that tool? What is your business objective? Can that be solved by any other tool that you have currently in your tech stack already? And really, I think sometimes our solution in the business world is to be like, let's solve the problem by buying a new tool, because we think that that's the most efficient way of doing it. But in reality, like, there's probably a feature or another possibility or another way of thinking that we could use to actually solve that business need without needing to invest more money into a separate tool. I find that the more tools that you have, the more difficult it is to consolidate all that data, because like, you have Salesforce as your single source of truth, but then you also have to make accommodations for every single one of those things or workarounds to make sure that all of that works. So the more tech that you have, you really want to have the least amount of tech to solve as many business problems as possible.
Totally. And you two have both hit on huge ones, which are tools and consolidation. They're great. They're great places to be. And to your point here, Amy, process, I think, is one that I like to highlight as well, because it doesn't cost you anything to do it, right? When we come in, I know we have our ticketing queues and our dashboards that have all the laundry list of things we need to get done, on however you're managing those, but we will try and reprioritize kind of what we're doing to have the biggest impact, right? But I find that tools are great, and tools that are used effectively are even better. So paying attention and spending some time on looking at processes. Can we save an hour here for sales team over a couple weeks? Can we give them back time in their day? Can we get customer service operating better, right? Can we automate anything? So to me, process is a huge piece as well. Like, assessing your tools, huge. And the tech debt is huge as well in a lot of companies. But I really feel that that's a good piece. And I loved your recommendation there of a form to fill out. But Amy, do you ever run across the problem that a lot of different companies do of silos, right? So sales buys a tool and they don't tell customer service. Have you ever run into anything like that, or could talk to us about something?
Yeah, 100%. I find that the companies that tend to have marketing operations and roll up into marketing, sales operations rolling up to sales, CS operations rolling up to CS, that tends to happen more frequently. I find that having this centralized kind of shared services, if you will, between like finance and legal, and in our particular case, operations. And having, even if you are specializing in the pre-sales versus the post-sales, having that roll up into one finance team or something of that sort, or their operations like the CRO, that actually really helps a lot with that kind of efficiency, because you can sort of then build out the whole process from end to end with all the different people that you have on board a team. So that happened at my last company. We actually did have operations rolling up into different ones, and we found that there was, I feel like IT was at the top trying to be like, wait, we really need to have that consolidation. And they were struggling to do so because they needed to pull different parties together to do that. Whereas at RouteThis and at my 2 companies ago at Nextopia, we also had that. We had a different approach of just rolling it all up into me, and having that purview and working with IT on that was really helpful to making sure that we were more efficient with our tool stack.
Yeah, I think it's great to bring into this IT, right? A lot of people don't necessarily think, like, we work and communicate across all departments as much as we are focused on some, right? In our RevOps world, having those relationships and that integration or open communication with everyone, IT is a huge one. I spend a lot of time with them. I think they're awesome. Is big. But we find that sales or customer service or some other departments may not necessarily give them the same credence as other ones. I'm going to throw you ladies a bit of a curveball here, so I apologize in advance. But do you think, in your opinions, that if a company doesn't have a RevOps team, could, in an economic time like this, creating one or putting one together actually benefit the company? Or would you try and work with what they have internally already, meaning once they're transitioning to RevOps, or think it's a good idea? Does that question make sense?
I honestly think, though, that regardless of a recession or an economic downturn, there's always an uptick, right? So to me, it's like, regardless of what's happening in the economy, I think revenue operations is a great way to invest in a company, and to start having that centralized, trusted source. That's really what we're aiming for, right? We want to be the team that people can go to and to ask questions for, and to understand the whole business, and understanding how the pieces come together. So I think regardless of the recession, I think it would actually benefit any company to invest in a RevOps team.
I know it's kind of a non-question, but I thought I'd ask it anyway. Sarita, you got any thoughts there?
No, I agree. I think now more than ever, it's important to invest in RevOps, whether that's building the team in-house or, outsourcing it and working with consultants to help, move faster. But I think now more than ever, getting a grasp of your data, getting a grasp of your processes, knowing where you can be more efficient, more effective, where the gaps are, where are things falling out. So now more than ever, it's important to start investing in RevOps and thinking about it, for sure.
Awesome. All right. So what are your guys' strategies in times like these? Do you weather the storm, or do we batten down the hatches? Do we pivot? Do we fail fast? What do you think the best approach is to RevOps? Do you stay your course, or do you adapt, for lack of better words?
I can go first. Yeah. For myself in a startup company, and that's really where I've spent most of my time. You have to pivot. You got to pivot fast.
Yeah.
Relying on historical trends and historical data is not helpful in these times, because these times are unprecedented. So you really need to be on top of your data and understand when you see that dip, or when you see something not working, you need to pivot, and you need to pivot fast. So you need to understand what's working, what's not working. I say it, if you're in a frequency of reviewing your pipeline and your forecast monthly or bi-monthly, increase that frequency as much as possible. So you can be agile and you can make the changes and adjustments as quickly as possible. So I am all for pivot and pivot fast.
And I'm going to put you on the spot here again. Do you have an example of when you've had to do that and how it's gone well or not, as the case may be, for your business?
Yeah, I think one piece of it was just, recently we were realizing that we were marketing very broadly to many, and being able to really hound in on our ICP and where is it that we really win. So doing that, deep analysis of our different, profiles and personas that we sell into, and where is that ICP, where is that, ideal customer that we sell into. And from there, we went deep into those specific accounts. So versus trying to go broad, especially in these types of times or heading into this downturn, I think it is important that you really hound in on that ICP. So we had to pivot our strategy completely, and we were no longer, marketing to the larger base. We were pivoting to ABM and going after these set list of accounts, because that is where we win, and we had a better chance of winning. And that is, we didn't need to put as much effort up here in order to get more down here. So we just recently made that pivot over the last 6 months, and it has worked out for us for sure.
Amy?
I think honestly, my answer is dependent on the industry that you're working for. In my previous industries for digital advertising and for commercial real estate, like the economic downturn for commercial real estate is a really big impact, especially after COVID. And I think for digital advertising, it was more about which industries were still doing really well and which are the most recession-proofed industries, if you will, that you want to sell to and to do advertising for. Whereas I feel like the ones like internet service provider, it's a little bit more steady, and like the demand for it remains a little bit higher, regardless of the times. It obviously still has an impact, especially if there's a global recession. But in terms of that kind of component, I think the pivot and think fast kind of thing is more definitely for commercial real estate. They have to make that change really quickly and to really understand. So Sarita's comment about like going from monthly data analysis to weekly makes a lot of sense from that angle. But I honestly think really like it comes down to consistent oversight of data analysis of what your customers and your prospects are interested in investing in, and you also making the choices to what kind of investments you want to make as a result. Consistent thinking on your sales forecasting and your reporting, and analyzing those numbers every week, every month. And then also understand it's all about smart data-backed decisions, really, like no matter which industry you're in. But I think certain industries have to pivot a little faster than others.
Sure. So I am of two minds about this. So I'm going to have an interesting one for you guys. And after I go this, I'm going to start mixing in some questions we're getting from people here just to tie them into what we're talking about here. But in my head, it's a little bit of survival of the quickest in really getting it done. And that's not being afraid to pivot and change a strategy, as well as doubling down on one, right? It could be the right choice. So staying the course in that sense may make sense, but there are a lot of factors that go into it. A downturn affects, like you were saying, Amy, different sectors to different extents, right? And at different speeds. Sometimes it could be quick, sometimes it can be slow. To me, the key is just being adaptable. Speed is relative. How quickly you get it done is completely relative. But if you're staying on top of the signals in the market, if you're staying on top of like an intelligence tool or things like that, you can really understand what's happening at the coalface or what's happening really in the situation that you're in. Actions instead of words, to me, right? Just try try, fail fast, and doing the work in the real conditions rather than just talking about it in perpetuity. So to me, those are really how I take a look and how I've adapted with these types of times. I think, so there was a question here that was really good. So what's stopping companies from investing in RevOps teams or reconfiguring to a RevOps model? It seems like a no-brainer. What do you guys think?
I think they see us as a cost center.
They do.
I think it's one of the teams that I think has tremendous value, and it has a tremendous amount of wins that you can have from making things more efficient. But I think that they often, unless you're reporting into sales, I found that as a whole, they find that it's considered more expensive because they don't have a direct number that they can attribute to revenue for that specific quarter. So there's a little bit more hesitation. And when you build a new process or when you're buying tech, they consider that to be a cost center instead of seeing the value in terms of the efficiencies that are brought.
Right.
I do think, though, that everybody wants the outcome that comes from having a revenue operations team. It's just about convincing the executives that it's worth investing and putting money and backing behind an operations team.
Yeah. And Sarita, feel free to hop in here, but I find at least that usually you can't get a RevOps team off the ground, or you're struggling with a RevOps team. There's usually some lack of visibility throughout the company, transparency, not visibility, there you go, and communication within the company, or it's an older company that isn't necessarily, or it's stuck in its kind of enterprise level ways, right? So some sales leaders want to be in control of their sales ops departments. Same with marketing, same with all departments, right? We want to have control over this, but that want of control or misalignment of your goals across those different groups can cause a lot of the issues. Not to say they don't work, not to say that isn't a working model that's worked for a lot of people, but RevOps really, to me, is for those companies that are focused on their customers. So if your business, not to say you can't be a different type of business, but really customer focused ones are more inclined to move towards this model versus someone that's doing a B2B type of industry or sale. So yeah, and cost is a big one, Amy. That's the biggest thing. It's going to cost me money to do it. No, it's going to save you money to do it. And you'll get a unified view, right? You'll have a better look at your things. But again, some teams make it work too, right? I've been at companies that have ops teams for each department. They have ops teams for each platform that they have. People forget the cost of the headcount. So they think it's all dispersed. It's part of different budgets. If we put it all together, it'll become a big number, and we don't want that. I think if it's a little bit of fear of change too, but again, it's a different model, right? It's giving more credence to information and gut than having one person be that. It's across a business. Got any thoughts for us?
No, I mean, I 100% agree. I think you nailed it. What I was thinking is the customer-centric view of it. And if they are customer-focused, they understand the value of, aligning those teams to a customer journey and, making ourselves more efficient. The good news is that I am seeing it more and more these days. So if we had this discussion 10 years ago, absolutely, I would... it would be a completely different discussion. So I'm pretty excited to see the growth of RevOps even over the last 5 years, I would say. So I think we are breaking down those barriers and those walls. So it is a pretty exciting time. And yeah.
I'm going to kind of put together two questions here that have come in, but I'll read out one of them, but it's, again, tying two together here. But we're currently operating in silos in every department. I'm trying to make a case to evolve our sales enablement and sales operations team into RevOps and sales enablement, because we are already orchestrating marketing, product, customer success, et cetera, to accomplish goals. Do you have any suggestions on first steps in developing or evolving into a RevOps team? So that's the first one. The other one is there's advice for a small company thinking of moving roles around to create RevOps, what do you think they need? So we'll kind of tie these together a little bit, but let's start with the first one. How do you make your case for a RevOps team in a company that's very divided, or what would your first steps be? I can run with this to start. Okay. So in my head, I started a lot of RevOps hasn't been a title that has come around until more recently, and really recently in Canada versus the US. Like the US has a better grasp on it or a more knowledge of it. We find we do a lot of education in talking about RevOps, right? So for me, I've usually lived in the sales ops world, right? So your sales operations, but you end up doing it for a multitude of different people. So to me, in making the case is understanding your customer journey. That's usually the first place that I say it down. If you can lay out your customer journey and show how interconnected it is and the steps along it, that is usually a really good way of showing the value of having this all in one place, the numbers, the information that can come out of it, and how it will benefit them, right? Hey, if we have this all together, we can streamline X, or it will save us X, or we can do these types of things. So it's doing the work to understand that journey, I find, is a good way to get some buy-in. But ladies, yeah.
Yeah, that's similar to what we did. We sat down with every team in that go-to-market and mapped out that customer journey, but also where the gaps and challenges are that nobody really knew who owned it. It was just this kind of finger pointing. Well, we thought you were doing that, and we thought you were doing that. And so having them all kind of in that room to map out that journey and realizing, wow, there's some significant process gaps. There's some handoff gaps that are happening, and nobody is monitoring it. Nobody is owning that. I think really help open eyes to, yes, somebody needs to own this entire journey, and making sure that those handoffs are happening, those gaps are being filled. So I think, yeah, very similar process that I went through in a previous life to kind of get that buy-in in the need for RevOps.
Totally. I think the other thing to think of, Amy, I'm going to come right to you, is doing the cost of not doing it is a great way to show it as well, right? Like understanding where the bottlenecks are right now and showing that it's costing us money to do this. Even dirty math. It doesn't, like, I love to say that because like, it doesn't have to be specific numbers, but if you can do the math of, hey, well, a sales team spends an hour and a half a week trying to put in all their information into the system because it doesn't work well, and they have to put it into this system and this system and this system, so they're duplicating their effort. We can save the company, let's give an average rate to a salesperson times the number of hours times X, and you multiply it out, and you'll have this number, and you'll be like, well, damn, that easily pays for what we're trying to do here, or it really shows and gives that visibility. So that's what you made me think of there, Sarita. Amy, over to you.
Oh, I was going to say that my first task coming into RouteThis and also at AdParlor, the digital advertising agency, were actually to do the full customer journey. And both times I worked really closely with finance on those. And I found that as like a very, very first step for anybody coming on board in a new RevOps role, or even just starting the new team, that is a great way to identify any kind of bottlenecks and any kind of confusion around who owns which task. Lately, we've been utilizing that workshop to start to make ideas and items that we want to work on, and plans for how we want to tackle each quarter, based off of that customer journey that we mapped out and the bottlenecks that we saw and the areas of confusion. And then from the customer journey that we built, my manager and I have been working on also mapping that to the tech stack. So similar to what Sarita was talking about at the beginning, just really understanding like at what point are we utilizing the tech stack for each of those steps that are part of the customer journey. So the first step is just really understanding like process end to end, who owns what. And then the second portion is mapping that from an efficiency standpoint of how we're going to utilize the tools then.
Totally. All right. So I'm going to roll another question into as we a little bit later as we go along here because it meets in nicely. So we've talked a lot about this. So let's talk about tech stack, right? It can be the biggest cost center for a company. How do you go about evaluating it? We touched on this briefly a little bit earlier, but what do you do if something isn't working effectively? So Amy, do you want to start us off? It's okay to say no.
My answer, it's similar to what we previously said about working with IT on tech purchase requests. But it also is, at my last company, I actually sat in on almost all the demos. And that's only if you have the resources to do that. But I found that being a part of the conversation and a part of the decision making, it really helped when they started to see me as the trusted source and to see what the implications are when you integrate it into Salesforce. So I did spend a lot of time evaluating a lot of the tools, pre-sales, post-sales, and part of the sales process. And that actually was a great way to make sure that it was getting used effectively. Right now, coming into RouteThis, I've been evaluating a lot of the tools and just understanding the features that are available from the tool stack that was already purchased. And so, and that allows me to know where there's a little bit of an overlap, or can I streamline it a little bit more, and just understanding how the teams have been utilizing it. So understanding the usage of that also is helpful.
Yeah. Sarita?
Yeah, it's funny. For myself, very similar. As long as the tech stack is all coming from the same budget. In my life, it was in the RevOps, but I've seen it in finance. And to Amy's point, being on those calls to understand, how it integrates, but also what is the strategy. So we usually make sure that every tool has a business owner. So they're the strategic owner of that tool. RevOps will not be the strategic owner of a marketing tool, but we will be a part of those discussions and make sure that we understand how it integrates. But there always will need to be a business owner. And if that business owner can't tell you the value that they're getting from that tool, what the strategy is for that tool, then they're, we're not renewing that tool. So I think as long as there's somebody there, and it has to be, somebody that owns that strategic level, can speak to the value and the ROI that they're getting from that tool. If they can't tell you who's using the tool, then we've got an issue on our hands, and that tool can most likely get ripped out.
Yeah, so I'm one evaluating to use matrices and create a 9-box, for lack of better words, of the different parts of the tool, right? So is it doing one thing? Is it doing one nice to have, or is it doing a whole lot of them, right? Is it doing a bunch of things or just one? Is it really easy to use, or is it really only people that have training that are able to use it? So I try and look at those and then go along. And then what are the other options available for a tool, right? Could it do more if we wanted it to? So I like to kind of look at that. So usability, ease of use, all those types of things written down one side, go across the other way and take a look at them all or score them. But for me, that's a big one when it comes to tools, right? To really get an understanding of what each one does. Like you said, who's using it, how many people are using it, and the ease of the big ones that I look at, and cost, right? So cost is a big piece, but if it's providing enough value, the cost it's not as big of a deal. So it's all a bit relative to what you're trying to look at, but it's that way in how I look at it. So this is the question from one of our attendees here is, what is the core set of tools required? We talk about reducing duplication. So what do we feel is the best mashup of available tools in our opinion? So again, this is very subjective to your current business or to different things, but we'll do our best here and tell you the ones that we like, and we can take it from there. Either of you want to go first? Yeah.
I can go first. Sure. I can speak to what I've seen and what we use, but obviously, having that one source of truth, which we've all spoke to. So having that CRM whether it's Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever system it is, but making sure you have that one CRM that the sales team is using, and that you have your data, your different systems integrating into, so you can get that one source of truth. On the marketing side, we need to have that marketing automation system just to, again, help with that efficiency, making us, work smarter, not harder. And then there's lots of awesome tools and little apps that we use that I don't think are necessary across the board for other companies. But for us, yes, having that marketing automation system where marketing lives in, having that CRM system that, some of marketing lives in to get the data and the reporting they need, but also our CSM team lives in Salesforce. And that is also where they're doing all of their reporting and data capturing. And then, eventually down the road, perhaps a BI tool to kind of bring a lot of the different data subsets together into one system. We aren't there yet, but I do see the benefit of that on a RevOps team to consolidate all of that data into one view. And that, like I said, there's lots of other apps and whatnot that are needed. Amy, I'm not sure what else you have.
I agree with the core. You've created basically the great foundation with your list of tools. I think the ones that I would additionally add after, if you have those tools in place already, are your Zoom info. Like a data enrichment tool is incredibly helpful and incredibly efficient for the BDR team, the marketing teams that want to have the form fills automatically added in. Sales uses it. I feel like that kind of having that in Salesforce and having that visibility and having the not having to log into 3 different systems to find out what the correct email address or the phone number is super helpful for making it more efficient for them to be making calls and to be focused on selling rather than on getting the right information. And then the other one I would say is Gong. If you have the resources as well to also listen to recordings of the sales team, the CS team, how well they're performing on the calls, where their communication could be a little bit more effective. All of that from a coaching perspective makes the customer experience just that much more fruitful. So those would be my 2.
Totally. Sorry.
I said, we're big fans of Gong. The only other one that I was thinking of when Amy was speaking was the BDR tool. So whether it's SalesLoft Outreach, but that is one that I've seen that has, if you have a BDR team, to be extremely useful also. So those are kind of the 3 big ones, but yeah, Gong is across the company, really, we use Gong. So we're of the same mind, right? Or we all are. We're all going to kind of give you similar ideas. For us, your CRM's huge. We're big HubSpot promoters just because it is easy to use. You don't have to have as much of a technical background or learn a whole language to be able to operate in Salesforce if you want to do anything custom. Just saying, I love me some Salesforce, certified in as well, but HubSpot is just intuitive for us. So that's a big one for us. As you guys have been saying, a lead scoring or something to help with your leads, your lead gen is always really important. A data tool, be it Insight Squared, be it Domo, be it, you can run the laundry list, whichever one you really prefer for yourself is a big one. I would call out to things like in your CRMs, if you have options for like an operations hub that helps you clean your data, if you're using like an InCycle or something like that to really like keep it all standardized and out and in and doing imports and looking for things if the tool isn't giving you as much as you need. Being able to visualize and sync all your information, whatever it may be it Syncari, be it Zapier, be it a warehouse that you're pushing through using Hevo. But those are the big tools. And like you guys said, so Gong or a Chorus are really good options. But like we said, so a CRM, a data tool to help you with those things, your BDR tools or your outreach tools, Zoom Info or whatever else you may, Alusha or whatever your team's using to bring in data or leads or to enrich your data, whatever it may be. Are really big ones for us. But I think a reporting tool or an analytics tool is huge for any company as well as any BI team, but also getting one
that you don't need a data scientist necessarily to run if you're a smaller business. So those are really a key to me, at least. Like, I learned SQL in my later years to work with these things, taught it to myself, because at that point we didn't have anyone else to do it and we needed to be able to use the data. Boy, was that a learning experience. But it's key to be able to understand how to join and use the information that you're giving so that you aren't making the data tell the story you want, but letting the data tell the story it has, if that makes sense. People love to manipulate numbers in this business. So in your tools, I would say keep that one in as a big one for you. So, but I'm not going to worry about our last couple questions we have here because we're running short on time. But are there any other questions or any other general QA that anybody has that they'd like to ask? Anything of that way inclined? I'll give you a minute to do that. But I think we got most of them. Or if you'd like some more information or more clarification, we're happy to give you that to you too. But nope, that's just well. There you go. What was I going to say? Well, so if you guys had to call out one thing or one tool that would maximize your ROI right now, or if you could give one recommendation of a tool worth getting, what would it be? It doesn't matter the price. We're just talking about it's going to benefit you. What do you think that would be? For me, it's probably Operations Hub if you are on HubSpot, because I love that thing. It's similar to some things that are in the back end of Salesforce. I don't know if it has a specific name, but it's a really cool tool to help you automate, use, clean, and it's an add-on. So it's not something you can do outside of it. Like I said, if it was outside, I'd say go with a data tool, but those are so personal. But ladies, do you have one that you might recommend? It changes so fast.
I mean, from a pre-sales, I would probably say ZoomInfo is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I love their weekly data cleanse. From a post-sales, we're not at this point yet at RouteThis, but I think we'd like to be, is purchasing CPQ and just being able to then move that into contracts, moving that into finance, billing out of it. That makes the whole end-to-end spectrum start to come together.
So would you go with the Salesforce native one, or would you go with an external company that provides a CPQ platform for Salesforce?
So this is sort of biased, but I do think that I would go with the Salesforce one, partially because I believe things like Pardot, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, CPQ, it was designed in a way, or I mean, if it was purchased by Salesforce, I mean, that's a different topic, but I think they really try to make their integrations more seamless because it's a Salesforce product and they want you to purchase everything and make it seamless from end to end. So part of me is a little bit partial to trying to use Salesforce as much as possible when it comes to integrations. Whereas I find that when you get third-party apps, you do have to make certain workarounds, and they do have certain benefits, and they definitely have different features that can be extremely beneficial to your business. So it's really about evaluating that portion. But sometimes I like to, where possible, utilize Salesforce as a central source of truth.
For sure. I went through that at an enterprise level business. For one, we had 12 instances of Salesforce. Let's not go down that road right now. But we also had one part of the business using CPQ and then another using a different system to do all our quoting and all of that. But our biggest problem with it was it was static. You had to pay for any upgrades to the system, and it didn't necessarily keep up with the updates that Salesforce was putting out on their platform. So you can get out of date and it can cause you problems. We couldn't migrate that to Lightning. So Salesforce had a standard view, and then they went to Lightning, which is now their standard view. But we couldn't go to Lightning because the components weren't compatible with using Lightning. So that's the one thing I guess we say when you're doing integrations, be sure you know what you're doing. And for two, be aware that there could be limitations in the future for you. Sarita?
I'll take a different spin to it, but I would
Ooh.
say on the RevOps side, making sure you've got some type of project management tool system to track your tickets that are coming in, track your roadmap, track the different projects that you're working on. I think that has been valuable to us. So
how did we all miss that in the tech stack one?
I love Jira for that. I've used Jira and Asana, but I still gotta say I love my Jira.
Yeah, we use Jira here, but yeah, having something to track those tickets that are coming in and keep the team focused for sure.
And what I will say about project management software is they are not all created equal, but honestly, find the one that works for you guys, that works for your business, and then does what you need. It may be Asana, it may be Monday, it may be Jira, it may be any myriad of things. There's hundreds of them out there, but you have to find the one that works for you, because trying to force yourself into a mold that doesn't work is really going to cause you more problems and headaches than it is. If something's not going to do the job and you really, something in your gut's telling you that it's not the right choice, trust it. That's my biggest recommendation to a lot of people. Support it with data, but trust your gut, because I've trusted other people's guts and it has gone badly for me. Not badly, but it just did make a lot more work. But we're coming to a close here. So we'd like to thank everybody for coming and for giving us your questions. It's great. If you have any more questions, please feel free to send us an email. Send it off to us. We can fire it along to the ladies if it's for them, or we're also happy to answer them in any, anyone that you have for us there. I believe the webinar will be available for preview at some point, Rob. So you'll either get an email about that. But we really like to thank you all for coming again, and hope to see you at our next webinar. I think we have something about that. Do we, Rob? There we go. There we go. So our next one is really going to be focused around key performance indicators, right? We talked about this early on. How do you define, track, and optimize those critical metrics for your scaling companies that you say that you need for your Series B investments, or that your C-suite's looking for, or that even just your marketing team needs? How do we align those? How do we focus on what's best for the entire company, and what that all means, and how to set them for your company? So that's coming late next month.
I was just going to add, this came from a great conversation we had with a fellow Communitech member, where he said that so many of the scaling companies that are smaller than his are just like really struggling. And then when they get to the investors are like, well, tell us about your cost of acquisition. Tell us about, your sales velocity. And they were like, huh?
Exactly.
So
and setting you up for success with those, I think, was the big one that we talked about with him too, is that if you don't know these are the metrics you're trying to track, you don't necessarily have the data points that you need to be able to retroactively get that information. So really setting yourself up to be successful in those things, or really focus on the big ones that we all know, and the rest can come as the company grows. But I'd like to thank Amy and Sarita for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you both, and all of you for joining us. It's been lovely, and have a great rest of your week.